Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is Jonas Reports for the 19th of November. Well, we had a little brief pull back up here, just above the 61%. Pretty clean. It was one of those where we were just getting to a bit of a oversold reach that just nice little bounce back. Nothing real relative from a news cycle. It's just things got a little extensive. No different than when we see the big jumps you expect at least a modest return back into it. When you get a runaway carry away like we had from the election, it just creates more room that has to be filled back in. And that's exactly what happened here. Still, from an overall weakness standpoint, you still got magenta under yellow. Not particularly great. Strong DOC came in pretty clear where we had that split, and you had the DOC steal under 13. So those were all negatives at that particular stage. Once it gets back above, that's usually enough to push it back up. We'll see if short-term buyers can now continue to lift or at least hold things in place. And you have orange dropping here. So in that case, as long as orange continues to drop, should be a positive. But if we get a spike back up of orange from the DOC standpoint, then you're going to have more weakness built into that. So we'll see it intraday first. But overall, I would expect that we're probably going to trade a little more sideways. The NASDAQ having filled that positive extreme setup, so that makes it clean within that configuration. But you're kind of in a directionless spot at this particular stage. Everyone's crying and moaning over what may happen with potential picks. You have Biden wandering around G20 meetings and various other leaders where he's sort of behind palm trees, missing the photos and things. So completely irrelevant. The question is going to become, Trump's picks, whether they're going to be confirmed. All that nonsense is going to start playing out. And of course, everything else is going to happen in between. We're going to really start to see if the statistics start to get a little bit more back to normal, because they don't have to hide anything unless they're trying to just push it out until the beginning of Trump's new term, where they're going to realize, oh my gosh, this is what you guys have been doing. We'll let that one play out as it does. Not really a concern at this particular stage. Oil took a strong bounce back here, pushing back up into the just under 70 range. And this is going to continue to be the question going forward into our following weeks, whether or not we're going to see any abatement or whether there's going to be an escalation with the Russia situation. We know here in Europe, the Russians cut off Austria from because of a dispute over money, and will that start to have an impact on supply availability? It remains to be seen, but at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to a question of change of policy for the U.S. And until that happens, I think you're still going to see strong oil, which means inflation is not dead. And for those that think it just magically went away, it didn't. It's just they keep touting that the rate of increase has dropped. Well, that's going to be fluctuating, and I think you're going to see that those continued price elevations are just going to go back and forth. Again, this is going to be a nightmare going forward for the euro. We just have no solutions yet, and we haven't heard anything from a positive standpoint about policy shift to accommodate what is likely coming from the tariff front. And again, we talked about it that this was just a sell-off in the gold, filling back in, but the realization is that inflation's not dead in that, and so gold making its slight comeback. The continuation for Bitcoin, though, not stopping, just slowing down a bit. Still very positive readings. We had to move into the negative from a short-term buyer's perspective. Once it moves it back above 13, negative 13.5 here, we should be back into a positive push, which will eventually break it out into new highs. So still positive extremes, and yes, they do get filled. So before anyone gets hyper excited, it's a pretty decent move all the way back down to fill them. So it can go extended period of time. We know that, but it's just one of those things you have to mark down because it will happen. ETH way behind from Bitcoin, and that's just because of the relative excitement from Bitcoin. When we look at it from a 5-minute chart here, intraday, you can see here in the European session, a lot of little creativity happening at this particular stage. So there's some volatility, but intraday, if we go back to it, clean early in the open. All that call buying had to be filled back in to some degree. Positive extreme only started, was not that far right here, and that filled back in. So that was pretty clean from an intraday standpoint, which means that things are relatively in control. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty and trying to figure out who the winners and losers are going to be coming forward in the next couple of months is really where things are shifting to, and that's going to be the dynamic. And when you hear about departments being departments from the different various government agencies being slashed, cut, wiped out. It's going to be interesting because Trump in his first term was known as a relatively free spenders. So is that going to change, or are they going to really actually get cost savings? And I think that we all know that the government moves way too slow for some of these drastic moves. So it'd be a shock to see if it happens, and then it becomes a question of the appointments. And you hear a lot of talk about these recess appointment idea, very effective solution, well within constitutional means. Will there be cooperation to do it, or will there be Senate Republicans trying to gum up the works, just as they did back in 2016? So those are the unknowns that continue to get filled in, and speculation is what's driving the market at this particular stage. And so that's going to be more volatility. And we'll be able to see it because they have to shift in significant enough ways that we get the readings ahead of time. So all good from that standpoint. As always, anything relevant, I'll put on the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.